Last week, someone you care about went an entire day without thinking about you once, not a single time. You weren't a passing thought while they brushed their teeth. You didn't cross their mind at lunch. You simply didn't exist in their head for a full 24 hours. And you have no idea who it was. Could be your closest friend, could be your partner, could be someone you texted that very morning. That doesn't feel great. But stay with this for a few minutes. Because what I'm about to walk you through is going to flip this from the worst thing you've heard all week to the only thing that actually matters. You were raised to believe you had an audience. Parents watched, teachers scored, friends ranked you against each other every single day. So you grew up assuming that continued, that somewhere in adulthood, people are still tracking you, still forming opinions, still keeping a mental file on your choices, your mistakes, your progress. Psychology measured this. They actually ran the numbers on how much attention people give you, and the result is so low it borders on comedy. You walk into work on Monday with a stain on your jacket you didn't notice until you were already in the elevator. Your whole morning is ruined. You sit through a meeting convinced every person in that room saw it. You angle your body. You keep your arms crossed. You think about it for hours. Nobody saw it. Tom Gilovich at Cornell proved this. He made students enter a room wearing a ridiculous t-shirt and asked them to estimate how many people noticed. They guessed roughly half. The real figure? Under 25%. And when Gilovich checked back with the people in the room, most of them couldn't describe the shirt at all. You've been managing a reputation that nobody is tracking. Think about how much energy that costs. Every outfit decision, every word you filter before you say it, every time you replay a conversation in your head and wish you'd said something different, all that effort pointed at an audience of almost zero. And it gets worse. Here's the number that changes everything. How many people in your life genuinely care what happens to you? Not people who'd say, oh, that's too bad if something went wrong. People who would actually feel it, who would lose sleep. Robin Dunbar at Oxford spent decades on this question. He studied primates, ancient tribes, modern social networks. The ceiling for stable human relationships is about 150. But the inner circle, the people who truly register your existence in a meaningful way, is about 5. 5 people on the entire planet are keeping track of your life. So that thing you said in Tuesday's meeting that you've been replaying at 2 a.m., Karen from accounting doesn't remember the meeting happened. She drove home, reheated pasta, watched 40 minutes of a show she'll abandon by Thursday, and fell asleep on the couch. You are not a character in Karen's story. You barely made it into the background. Same with that Instagram post you spent 20 minutes wording perfectly. It got 11 likes. You checked 3 times. Somewhere a blurry photo of someone's lunch got 200. Nobody was evaluating your post. They were scrolling with their thumb while waiting for their coffee order. Or think about your last birthday. All those Facebook messages from people you haven't spoken to in years. Happy birthday. Hope it's a great one. Copy, paste, send, forget. They spent 4 seconds on you. You spent the next hour wondering if you should reply to each one individually. Nobody is keeping score, and you've been playing as if there's a scoreboard. Here's where this gets uncomfortable. You know all of this on some level. You sense that people aren't really paying attention, and yet you still perform every day for a room that checked out a long time ago. Social psychology has a name for it: self-monitoring. High self-monitors have a different version of themselves for every room they enter. One for colleagues, one for old friends. One for family dinners, one for people they've just met, each version carefully adjusted. The research on self-monitors is strange. They climb faster professionally, they read rooms well, they get liked quickly. But they also report higher emotional exhaustion and a recurring feeling they describe the same way. I don't know who I am when I'm alone. You've felt that, maybe not in those words, but you've had that moment at a dinner with old friends where you catch yourself becoming the version of you from 10 years ago, the jokes you used to make, the opinions you used to hold. You've moved on from all of it, but you slip back into the costume because explaining the new you would take too long and risk too much. And then there's the moment nobody talks about. You're in a group. You're telling a story. Halfway through, you notice one person pull out their phone, another turns to whisper to someone. The room drifts. And your voice gets quieter without you deciding to make it quieter. You finish the sentence, but you've already abandoned it inside. Nobody notices that you stopped caring about your own story. That's not a small thing. That's the entire problem in one moment. You performed, nobody watched, and instead of feeling angry, you felt something worse. You felt like you deserved it. You didn't. But here's the strange part. Even after that moment, even after you caught the pattern, you probably went right back to performing the next day. Because knowing nobody is watching and actually believing it are two completely different things. A guy I knew in college used to spend an hour crafting every post. Drafts, rewrites, feedback rounds, scheduled timing. One afternoon he tossed out a random half-thought about his morning coffee. No filter, no effort. That one got more engagement than anything he'd ever polished. Nobody connects with your rehearsed version. They connect with whatever leaks out when you forget to perform. A friend of mine got sick last year. Nothing serious, but she was off the grid for 10 days. No messages, no posts, no plans. When she resurfaced, the thing she couldn't stop talking about wasn't the illness, it was the count. Out of roughly 60 people she considered friends, 4 reached out. 4 people in 2 weeks noticed she was missing from their life. She said it felt like opening a drawer she'd been afraid to look inside. Most of what she found in there had been dead for years. The 4 that remained were the only ones that had ever been alive. And that brings us to the part that changes everything. Because once you really absorb this, once you stop fighting it and let it settle, something happens that nobody warns you about. There's a day this hits you. Nothing dramatic happens. You're at a gathering and you realize nobody will come talk to you unless you walk over first. Or your phone stays silent for a week and nobody wonders why. Or you drop an opinion you held publicly for years and the world doesn't flinch. And for a minute, it wrecks you. You think about every conversation you steered to make someone comfortable. Every opinion you swallowed because the room didn't seem ready for it. Every time you laughed at something that wasn't funny because you thought the cost of not laughing was too high. All of that effort. For people who couldn't pick your jacket out of a lineup, nobody was keeping score. Nobody was ever keeping score. But then something cracks open. You say what you think in a meeting and the ceiling doesn't collapse. Nobody storms out. Nobody even looks up from their laptop. You wear the thing you actually like instead of the thing that's safe. You leave at 9:30 because you're done, not because enough time has passed for it to look acceptable. You pick up the guitar you quit in college because you thought you weren't good enough for anyone to hear. You send the message you've been rewriting in your notes app for 3 weeks. You tell someone the truth without building a scaffolding of jokes around it first. A friend calls and says, "You seem different." You sit with that for a second. You just stopped rehearsing for a room that was empty the whole time.